The first thing Caleb Reed heard was laughter, the kind of bright ringing sound he had not heard inside his house since his wife Rachel died. His hand still on the brass doorknob paused. He was never home at noon. He was always at the tower, always in glass rooms where the air hummed with money and voices waited for his yes. But today the meeting ended early. The city traffic opened like a secret door, and his driver took a shorter road. He stepped into his own living room and froze. There in the sunny space by the big window stood his little boy Evan without his crutches, sweat on his forehead, knees trembling, while the maid Nora crouched nearby, palms up, eyes fixed on him like he was the only star in the sky. "I've got you," Nora said softly. Evan took a step, his foot wobbled. He took another. The room slowed like time itself was holding its breath. Caleb's heart slammed so hard he forgot to breathe. The third step slipped. Evan swayed, arms flailing. Caleb heard his name crack out of his own throat. "Evan!" Everything in him rushed forward, the world tilted, and then cut to black. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Tell me your city in the comments. If this moment already has your heart racing, tap like so more people can see this story. Hours ago, no, weeks ago, you could have drawn a map of Caleb's life with a straight ruler. Wake up before dawn, run 5 miles on the treadmill without looking at the sunrise, shower, suit, car, elevator, meetings, numbers, signatures, silence. He did not eat breakfast so much as he fed the machine that kept him moving. His friends, what little of them remained, said he wore grief like a second suit, one stitch so tight it cut his breath. When Rachel died, the house lost its music. The kitchen lost its stories. The walls learned to keep secrets. He told himself that staying busy was love too. If he built more, earned more, protected more, then the empty places would not swallow him. He told himself Evan would understand one day. He told himself a lot of things. Evan was 8. His legs were thin and sensitive, and sometimes the muscles locked up without warning. He used small blue crutches with soft padding at the top, and he had names for them: Bolt and Flash, because Nora told him sticks could be heroes too. He loved cars, space documentaries, and the sound the wind made in the trees by his window. He did not say much, but when he smiled, the house remembered how to be warm. He asked for his father every night in different ways: by placing drawings on Caleb's desk, by slamming scores from spelling tests onto the kitchen table, by waiting with books about rockets in the hallway, while Caleb came home late and kissed his hair while he slept. Nora had been in the house for 6 months. She had steady hands and a voice that knew when to be soft and when to be brave. There were tiny burn marks on her left wrist from old kitchen jobs, and she wore her hair in a low bun that always loosened as the day grew long. She came from a crowded apartment where hope learned to stretch. Her younger brother Jake could not run as a child. He learned to move with help, one careful exercise at a time. Nora had learned those moves because love forced her to. She never called herself a therapist. She just knew what patient meant when time wanted to rush, and what listen meant when silence pretended to be empty. In the Reed house, Nora cleaned and cooked and kept things quiet. But little by little, Evan began to follow her like a small planet follows a moon. She taught him games that did not look like therapy, balancing a book on his head while counting stars in the rug, stepping from one floor tile to the next like each square was a safe island. She told him stories where boys were brave even when brave looked like shaking. Caleb noticed and did not notice. He noticed the reports that landed on his table every Friday: expenses neat, schedules clear, notes about Evan's school and medicine typed in clean lines. He did not notice the way Evan's steps grew a hair more stable each week, because he was not there when the hours between afternoon and evening did their quiet work. He nodded when the physical therapist sent updates by email and told his assistant to send flowers at the holidays. He smiled at the photos Nora placed in a shared family album: Evan at the park with his crutches on the grass, Evan on the couch with a tower of puzzle pieces, Evan sleeping with a toy rocket hugged to his chest. Caleb's fingers lingered on the screen and then moved to the next document. Grief is sneaky like that, it makes you think later is a kind of love. On that particular day, a Thursday, the city felt different. The sky was bright, bluer than it had been all week, and a breeze had swept the haze off the river. Caleb's driver, Ron, glanced in the rearview mirror. "Sir, the road to the tower is clear, but the meeting on your calendar got pushed. They won't have the numbers until 4. Caleb looked at the time. It was just after 11. "Home," he said, surprising himself. He watched the city slide by, kids in uniforms kicking a ball by a corner store, a woman pushing a stroller with a dog trotting beside her, a man on a ladder painting a sign that said Hope Barbers. He thought of Rachel and the way she used to say, "The world is not only rooms with glass." He touched the inside pocket of his jacket where he kept the last note she wrote him. He never opened it. He only needed to know it was there. In the house, the air was full of sunlight and lemon oil. The housekeeper was off that day. The chef had left a covered dish of soup on the stove and a note that said, "Warm on low." The quiet should have been complete, but then came that laugh, Evan's laugh, bright and unafraid, and the gentle rise of Nora's voice. Caleb stepped closer to the archway that opened into the living room and saw the scene he would remember for the rest of his life. Nora had moved the coffee table to the side. The rug lay clear like a small field. Evan stood in socks, his crutches leaning against the couch like two friends waiting their turn. the sun painted gold on his arms. He rocked forward and back, testing, then set his foot down. Nora held her hands near him, not touching, ready. How many islands? She asked. Evan grinned. 3, he said, and then the rocket. 3 in the rocket, Nora echoed, as if that was a normal plan. Breathe, look at me. I'm not going anywhere. Caleb's mind screamed two things at once: stop this and don't move. He wanted to shout that the doctor had said not to push. He wanted to clap and cry and fall to his knees, but the moment was a fragile bird. He knew if he burst into the room it might fly. So he stood in the doorway with one hand braced against the frame, and he let the world be slow. Evan's first step was small but real. He placed his foot, swayed, held. And the little muscle near his knee fluttered like a moth trying to land. The second step clipped over the rug's pattern. He squeezed his fists. He set his jaw. He looked up at Nora with a question in his eyes. Can I? And Nora's smile answered, you already are. One more, she said. Just one more, then bolt and flash, jump in. The third step broke and wobbled. Evan's foot slid. He windmilled his arms, one hand catching air, the other catching a fold of Nora's shirt. She moved a half-inch forward and then stopped, letting him fight for balance. I'm here, she whispered. I'm right here. Evan steadied, though his lip trembled. He looked so much like Rachel right then that Caleb's vision blurred. Evan blinked hard, daring tears not to fall, and then he did what brave people do when fear tries to win. He tried again. He set his foot down like a promise. He took that third step and held it. Caleb stepped into the room without meaning to. The floor creaked. Nora glanced up and saw him. For an instant, worry flashed across her face, like she was about to get scolded for moving the furniture or for cheering too loudly. She straightened, but she did not remove her hands. Mr. Reed, she said, breath quick with joy and effort. He's okay. Evan turned, eyes wide, chest pumping like a runner. Dad, he said, and the words sounded like a gift wrapped in sunshine. Did you see? And that was when the wobble came back. Maybe it was the turn, maybe it was the surprise, maybe it was just that bravery gets tired too. His foot slipped. The world tilted one more time, and Caleb lunged with every part of him. He caught Evan against his chest, an awkward, tight, desperate hug that knocked air out of them both. Evan's chin pressed into Caleb's tie. The boy gasped and then laughed again, because laughter is what spills out when relief brushes fear. Nora's hands were already there, steadying them both. You okay? She asked, quiet and fierce. I'm fine, Evan said, muffled in his father's shirt. Caleb's arms would not let go. For a heartbeat, the house felt like it used to, full, alive, holding more than grief. Then the questions rushed in. What are you doing? Caleb asked, the words too sharp. Where are your crutches? What if he fell? What if? He stopped because he heard his own voice and did not like it. Nora did not flinch, but her eyes softened in a way that made him feel seen. We're not replacing the crutches, she said. We're practicing the steps in between, only for a few seconds at a time. He's strong, he knows when to stop. Evan pulled back, small and proud. I did 3 islands and a rocket, he said. Almost. Caleb looked at his son's face, sweat, joy, the stubborn set of his jaw. He looked at Nora, whose hands were open and steady even when accused by no one. He looked at the sun, which had the nerve to keep shining when he wanted the world to pause. He heard his own father's voice from 1,000 years ago, be a man. But what did that mean now? To protect, to control, to let go? He cleared his throat, gentled his voice. Was the doctor okay with this? Nora nodded. We talked about guided balance. I follow his notes. I also learned from helping my brother. We only do what Evan chooses. We stop at the first sign of pain. She looked at Evan. Show your dad the signal. Evan held up 2 fingers. 2 taps, he said, tapping his thigh, means stop now, even if I say keep going. Caleb felt something shift inside him, like a rusty lock turning. He had never heard about the 2-tap rule. He had never been home at noon to see it used. Okay, Caleb said, the word heavy with the weight of everything he did not know. He set Evan gently on the couch. He picked up the blue crutches and placed them within reach, like returning 2 friends to their rightful places. Evan leaned back, rosy with effort. Nora handed him a glass of water with a straw. Sip slow, she said. He did. The straw bent and popped. Nora laughed and fixed it, the easy kind of care that spoke a language no meeting had ever taught Caleb. The soup on the stove called to them. Nora glanced toward the kitchen. There's chicken noodle, she said. I'll get it, Caleb said quickly, surprising himself again. He went to the kitchen for bowls and found the ladle, the steam, the smell of thyme. Rachel used to add lemon to soup. He squeezed a slice into one bowl, then stopped, suddenly unsure. Nora's voice came carefully from the doorway. Evan loves the lemon, she said. Not too much. Caleb looked at her. Gratitude landed like a small light inside his chest. Thank you, he said. He carried the bowls out like a man learning a new job. They ate together on the couch, small sips, small smiles, a big silence that did not feel cold. Evan told a story about a science video where a frog went to space. He acted the hop with his hands. He explained with serious eyes that frogs do not like helmets. Caleb listened so hard he forgot to think about the time. He asked a good question. Evan answered, delighted by being asked. Nora tucked a blanket over Evan's knees and said, rest 5 minutes, then we stretch. 5, Evan agreed, holding up a hand with all fingers splayed like a star. An email chimed on Caleb's phone, his old life tugging. He grounded himself by watching Evan trace the rug's pattern with a finger. He looked at Nora, who was quietly stacking the puzzle pieces into color families, not to tidy so much as to make the next game easier. He saw the way she glanced at Evan's face every few seconds, checking signals only she seemed to hear. He said, "How long have you been doing this?" She thought for a moment. "Since winter," she said, very slow, very safe. "Some days we only play games that look like nothing, but it is something." He trusts himself a little more each day. She hesitated. "I was going to tell you, Mr. Reed, I wrote out the plan. I left it with the therapist's report." Caleb searched his memory and saw a folder he had pushed aside for a later that never came. "I should have read it," he said. His voice was rough. "I should have been here." Nora shook her head, kind but firm. "You are here now." Evan yawned, a small lion sound. "Dad," he said, eyes heavy, "can I show you the rocket later?" "Yes," Caleb said, like a promise. "I want to see it." 5 minutes turned into 15. The clock moved and did not matter. When Evan dozed and his breathing found that soft, even rhythm of safe sleep, Nora rose. "I'll put the coffee table back," she whispered. Caleb stood too. "Leave it," he said. "It looks like a field." They both looked at the empty square of rug and smiled, a little shy. Nora tucked her hands into her pockets the way she did when feelings got close to the surface. "May I be honest?" she asked. "Please," he said. "He is brave," she said. "So are you." The words landed in the room and stayed. When Evan woke, the rocket game waited. It involved 3 small foam pads that Nora had bought with her own money because they were softer than the yoga blocks in the gym. She placed them like stepping stones, and beyond them she put the toy rocket on the windowsill. "You don't have to," she told Evan every single time. "We can just sit and read." He nodded and then shook his head because he wanted the rocket, because wanting is sometimes stronger than fear. Caleb took a step back so he would not hover. He clasped his hands behind his back to stop himself from reaching too soon. "You've got this," he said, voice steady. Evan looked up, surprised and proud. "Count with me?" "Always," Caleb said. Nora's eyes flicked to him, pleased. "1," Evan said, placing his foot on the first pad. "2," he said, landing on the second. "3," he whispered, and the third pad bowed a little under his weight. His lips parted. The rocket waited on the sill, white and red. He lifted his hand toward it, fingers stretching, the distance between him and the toy both tiny and huge. Caleb felt his heart leave his chest and float across the room to hold his son steady. Nora lowered her hands, trusting the moment. Evan reached. The tips of his fingers brushed the rocket's nose. And just then, the front door opened, the alarm chimed, and a voice called from the hallway, cheerful and loud, "Delivery for Mr. Reed." Evan flinched, the foam pad slid. His knee gave a quick shake, the rocket wobbled toward the edge of the sill, tipping like a teetering star. Caleb moved too fast, Nora moved precise. The delivery man's footsteps approached. The rocket spun in place, threatening to drop. Evan's mouth made a small O, the sound of a boy caught between bravery and surprise. 2 taps, he whispered, uncertain, fingers drumming his thigh. 2 taps. Caleb froze at that signal, every muscle listening. The pad held, Evan steadied. The rocket tilted, paused on the lip of falling, and right before it could crash to the floor, a gust of wind pushed through the slightly open window and the rocket started to slide off the sill. Caleb's eyes snapped to Nora's. Evan's hand lifted in the air, reaching for what seemed about to be lost. The delivery man's shadow stretched across the doorway, and at that exact breath in time, when a toy and a boy and a father's new hope all hung by a thread, something happened that none of them saw coming. The rocket slid, the nose tipping over the windowsill as the delivery man's cheerful voice filled the hall. Evan's eyes went wide, his lips forming a tiny O. He breathed the words he and Nora had agreed on for safety, 2 taps, and drummed his thigh. Caleb froze at once, every muscle listening to his boy instead of the fear in his own chest. The foam pad under Evan's foot bent, held, then slipped a hair more as the breeze nosed the curtain and the toy began to fall. Evan's focus narrowed to a bright point. His fingers shot forward and caught the rocket midair, but the catch pulled his weight to the side. His knee dipped, his shoulders tilted. For one raw instant, everything teetered, the boy, the toy, the father learning how not to rush. Then Nora stepped a half-inch closer, voice low and steady. "I'm right here, breathe." Evan pulled his belly tight like they'd practiced, pressed through his heel and found his balance. The rocket trembled in his hand and then stilled. Caleb exhaled the breath he'd been holding for what felt like the whole morning. The delivery man hovered in the doorway, cap in hand, eyes apologetic. "So sorry, sir, I didn't mean to scare." He cut himself off, watching Evan straighten with the careful pride of a small astronaut who has just saved his ship. Caleb lifted a palm without looking away from his son. "It's okay." His voice came out gentler than he felt. "Set it down there, please." The man nodded and placed a neat wooden box on the console table. A white card wrote on top, the ink a soft blue that made Caleb's heart misstep. Riverlight Storage, scheduled release. Under that, a smaller line for C. Reed and E. Reed from Rachel. Caleb's fingers brushed the card as if it might be hot. He could feel Nora's glance, quick and careful, taking in the name and then moving back to Evan so the room would not tip toward grief too fast. Evan hugged the rocket to his chest, eyes still shiny with the rush. "Dad," he said, "I caught it." He sounded amazed and a little surprised by his own hands. Caleb smiled with his whole face, something he had not done in a long time. You did, he said softly, you really did. Nora's grin broke free, bright and unguarded. That was brave, she said to Evan, then to Caleb, and that was good listening. The three of them let the moment settle like dust in sunlight. Outside, the breeze eased. Inside, calm came back like a tide. They set Evan on the couch for a water break, the rocket parked carefully on the pillow beside him like a sleeping pet. Caleb hovered a step away, drawn forward, forcing himself to pause when Evan tapped once, resting, not stopping. Nora tucked the foam pads aside and straightened the rug's edges, then wiped the windowsill with the corner of her sleeve, the small movements of someone who knows how to keep a fragile room steady. Her eyes touched the wooden box on the console, then lifted to Caleb. Do you want me to? She began. Caleb shook his head and walked to it, his hands suddenly clumsy with the key and the tied string. The box was smooth and warm, the kind of wood Rachel liked for old music players at flea markets. He slipped the knot and lifted the lid. A soft smell of cedar rose. On top lay a folded note. Rachel's handwriting tilted right as if it wanted to move. Caleb read the first line and had to stop, blinking hard until the letters steadied. My loves, if you're opening this, it means the house is ready. He swallowed and kept going. I saved a few things I hoped you'd need later when Brave started to feel bigger than fear. There was a small metronome wrapped in a cloth with tiny blue stars, the kind they used in piano lessons to keep time. Beneath it sat a printout of simple home exercises with little sketches, Rachel's sketches, loose and sweet, of careful steps between two lines. At the bottom, a key dangled from a tag that said, in her voice so clear Caleb could hear her say it, sunroom closet, open when you're not in a hurry. He touched the tag and had to press his lips together for a moment to keep the ache from spilling out where Evan could see. Evan sat forward on the couch, curiosity tugging at his sleepiness. What's that? He asked, pointing at the triangle of wood with the swinging arm. A beat keeper, Caleb said, kneeling to set the metronome on the coffee table. It makes ticks. Your mom and I used to play a game where we walked to it 1 foot on tick, 1 foot on talk. His voice softened at the memory. She was better at it than me. Nora crouched beside Evan, pleased. Rhythm walking, she said. It can help your steps feel steady. Want to hear it? Evan nodded, his fingers already tapping a pretend drum on the rocket's side. Caleb wound the little key and lifted the arm. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sound filled the living room like a soft, brave heartbeat. Nora placed the 3 foam pads back onto the rug, this time like stepping stones in a gentle curve. We'll make the islands closer, she said, only if you want. Evan glanced at Caleb, then at the metronome, then at his own knees. He put the rocket down with care and pushed himself upright. I want, he said. His voice had the small, solid weight of a decision. They set him in front of the first pad. The metronome ticked on. Caleb forced his hands to lace behind his back so they wouldn't reach too soon. We can stop any time, he said. Evan nodded and squared his shoulders. On the tick he moved. On the talk he placed his foot. His breath matched the sound without anyone telling it to. First pad, hold, breathe. Second pad, hold, breathe. Third pad, hold a little longer as his knee quivered like a string in wind. Nora hovered with her hands open, palms up, offering help but not stealing courage. Caleb counted in his head without speaking, his throat tight with the wish to help and the new skill of waiting. At the end of the small curve, Evan looked at the windowsill where the rocket had almost fallen and smiled. Again, he said, the word quiet and fierce. He went back and did it a second time, then a third, the metronome teaching the room the rhythm of hope. After 3 sets, Nora touched the back of Evan's hand. Water. Evan gave a small, reluctant sigh and obeyed, sipping while his chest rose and fell like a tide coming home. Caleb turned the metronome's arm down to stop the sound, and the quiet that followed felt warm instead of empty. He picked up the key with the tag and met Nora's eyes. Sunroom, he asked. She nodded once, eyebrows lifting with a quiet question that felt like permission. He managed a half smile. Let's see what your mom left us. They walked to the sunroom at the back of the house, the one that caught afternoon light and made winter feel less sharp. Plants Rachel had loved grew there in tidy rows, snake plants that even Caleb had not managed to forget to water, a lemon tree that had a single green fruit like a promise. In the corner stood a narrow closet door he had never opened. The key slid into the lock as if it had been waiting. The door stuck at first and then gave with a little sigh. Inside, wrapped in moving blankets, were 2 long rails and a simple adjustable frame parallel bars, the kind used in therapy rooms. Caleb's breath left him. For a second he could almost smell Rachel's shampoo and hear her laugh the way she would have said, "Of course I ordered them. You think I was going to let a building have all the tools and not our home?" He reached in and touched the cool metal. She planned this, he whispered. Nora nodded, her eyes bright. She always did. They cleared a strip of floor by the windows, the lemon tree watching like a kind old friend. Caleb and Nora worked without many words, reading the simple instructions, tightening the hand knobs until the bars stood firm and straight. Evan watched from the doorway, hand on the frame, eyes shining. Can I try? He asked. Caleb checked the bolts one more time and then held out his hand. Come to the start, he said, and Evan shuffled forward with bolt and flash under his arms, then handed the crutches to Caleb like passing torches to a keeper of light. Evan set his palms on the bars. His fingers were small and serious. Caleb wound the metronome again and set it on the windowsill where the breeze could kiss the tick-tock. The sound filled the sunroom, bouncing off the glass and settling into their bones. Nora took the spot beside Evan's left shoulder, Caleb the right, both far enough that the boy owned the space between the rails. "Remember the 2 taps," Nora said. Evan nodded, eyes forward. He lifted one foot tick and placed it down talk. The bars hummed under his hands like quiet helpers. 1 step, another. 10 slow, careful ticks later, he had covered the little distance to the lemon tree and stopped, chest glowing with effort. He looked up at his father as if to say, "Are you seeing this?" And Caleb's answer, in his eyes and the way his hands stayed respectfully away, was, "I am." They rested, then Evan asked to go back. He did, a little faster this time, counting in whispers that only he could hear. "I feel like the floor is a boat," he said at the end, grinning. "A steady boat," Nora said, "with a captain who knows when to slow." Evan's grin turned soft. "Like Mom," he said, the word hung in the sunlight. Caleb's throat closed for a heartbeat. He pushed through it. "Like Mom," he agreed. They let the metronome run down until the arm stilled, and the sunroom filled with the kind of quiet that feels like a held hand. Back in the living room, they did stretches that looked like stories. Evan pretended to be a tall tree and then a small rock. He made a silly face when Nora called one move sleepy jellyfish, and Caleb laughed without apology. Between games, he glanced again and again at the paper with Rachel's sketches, tracing the lines with a finger, learning his house as if it were new. Guilt tried to creep in, "Where were you?" But Nora's steady presence left no space for shame to grow. "You're here now," she had said earlier. He repeated it in his mind like a prayer. They took a late lunch at the kitchen island, toast triangles, apple slices, soup warmed low. Evan told Ron, who had stuck his head into check, about the rocket rescue, leaving out the part where he had been afraid and doubling the part where he had reached like an astronaut. Ron raised both brows and said very solemnly that astronauts were allowed extra apple slices by law. After lunch, Evan drew the 3 islands and the rocket on a piece of paper, adding a little metronome in the corner with sound lines coming out of it like music. He signed it EVANR in big letters, then hesitated. "Can I add Mom's name?" he asked. Caleb nodded, a soft ache and a warm pride tangling together. Evan wrote Rachel at the top, then frowned. "Her last name was Reed too, right?" "Always," Caleb said, and the word had weight and light in it at the same time. Clouds pulled across the sun in the late afternoon, the sky trying on gray the way a kid tries on coats. The wind pressed a palm to the windows and made the lemon leaves nod. Evan asked if he could show the rocket path to the front hallway. Just once, he bargained, the way children do when they want to do a brave thing more than they want a nap. Nora looked at Caleb. "We can set 2 pads and keep 1 step as a stand," she said. "Closer to the wall, only if he chooses." Evan chose. They set the pads in a short line with the console table to the right and plenty of space to catch. Caleb checked the area twice, moving the corner of a rug that stuck up, tucking a charging cable out of the way as if attention could build a fence around risk. The metronome went on the console again. Tick, tock. Evan took the first step clean. On the second, he paused longer, jaw tight. He breathed the way Nora had taught him, square breath in, hold out, hold. He went for the third and wavered. 2 taps, Nora asked softly, reminding not pushing. Evan tapped once, rest, and set his foot down again, correcting. The arm of the metronome swung, patient as a lighthouse. He made the 3rd step and lifted his hand toward the console. The rocket sat there now, guarding the box like a little soldier. His fingertips touched the plastic fin. He smiled. Right then, the wind shouldered the front door through the slightest gap and the alarm chimed again. A framed photo above the console, Rachel laughing with a tiny Evan under a shower of soap bubbles, shivered in its hook and then bumped forward. The glass did not shatter, but it clacked the wood, a sharp, sudden click that made Evan's shoulders jerk. His foot slid an inch. His knee bent too fast. The metronome kept ticking like it had not seen the problem. Caleb started forward, checked himself, felt the heat of fear rush his face. "I've got you," he said, trying to make his voice slow water instead of fast ice. Evan's eyes filled with that wild, bright look that shows up in the exact middle of brave and scared. Nora shifted her weight to be there without crowding him. "Listen," she said, and the one word had 1,000 quiets inside it. Tick-tock. Evan matched it again for one breath, then another. He steadied almost. From the porch a quick knock came, 2 light taps, then the door opened a careful 2 inches, just enough for a woman's voice to travel inside like a remembered song. "Hello, Mr. Reed, I'm so sorry to come back," but the voice stopped. The woman must have seen the scene in the hall, the boy on the 3rd island, the father with his hands ready and still, the maid with open palms, the little wooden triangle keeping time for a house that had been waiting. Caleb didn't turn at first. He kept his eyes on Evan until the boy's foot found the floor and held. Only then did he look toward the doorway. A woman stood there in a neat raincoat, her hair gathered low, her face both new and somehow familiar in the bone lines around the eyes. She held a folder against her chest and a small canvas bag hung from her shoulder with the Riverlight logo on it. Her voice was careful, the way a nurse's voice is careful when carrying delicate news. I think this belongs to you, she said, lifting the folder a little. I'm Lily Hart. I worked with Rachel at the clinic. She asked me to bring this when the box finally arrived, and I should have come sooner. Caleb's fingers tightened around the air. You knew my wife? The words came out rough. Lily nodded, throat moving. She made a plan, she said, for him, for you. She looked at Evan, and something tender and steady settled in her eyes the way sunlight settles on a small, brave shore. There's a letter, she went on, tapping the folder's edge. And a map of, well, it's easier if I show you. She hid something in the house, and the wind gave one more small push at the door and the alarm chimed again, quick as a heartbeat skipping. Evan startled a second time, knee wobbling hard, hand lifting off the console as if to reach for Lily's voice. The metronome kept time. The photo frame clicked once more. Caleb stepped in, but at that exact breath before his hands could close, Evan's foot slid off the pad, his center pitched forward, and he began to fall. The fall happened in a blur, a small body pitching forward, a hand missing the rail by inches, the rocket tumbling in slow motion. Caleb's heart lunged before his feet did. He caught Evan against his chest just before the boy hit the ground, the impact a soft thud cushioned by his father's arms. For a heartbeat nobody breathed. Then Evan blinked up at him, dazed but unhurt, the rocket clutched in his small fist. I didn't fall all the way, he said, half trembling, half proud. Caleb's arms tightened. No, you didn't, he whispered, his voice shaking with more than fear. You didn't. Nora was there in an instant, kneeling beside them, checking Evan's knees, his hands, his eyes. You did everything right, she said softly. You called 2 taps, you waited, you let help find you. Evan nodded, tears welling, not of pain but of release. Caleb set him gently back on his feet, one hand steadying his shoulder. Next time, Caleb said, I'll count with you from the start. Evan smiled a tiny, brave smile. Promise, promise. Lily Hart still stood by the open door, eyes wet from the sight. She stepped forward, setting the folder on the console. He's stronger than she ever hoped, she said quietly. Nora looked up. You knew Rachel well, Lily nodded. We worked together in therapy outreach. She talked about this house all the time. She said if anything ever happened, she wanted it to stay full of steps and laughter, not silence. Caleb swallowed hard. She did that, he said. She really did. Evan tugged his sleeve. What's in the folder, Dad? Caleb hesitated, then sat on the couch with Evan beside him and opened the flap. Inside were drawings, Rachel's sketches again, softer this time, of the house itself. Arrows led from the sunroom to the garden door, from the garden to the small shed near the lemon tree. At the bottom she'd written in her slanted hand, for when you're ready to find the last surprise. A tiny heart sat after the words. The 3 adults exchanged looks, Nora curious, Lily smiling through tears, Caleb torn between grief and wonder. What did she hide out there? Nora asked. Lily shook her head. She never said, only that it would help him learn to fly. Evan's eyes widened. Fly, he whispered, gripping the rocket. Can we go now? Caleb opened his mouth to say later, but the words wouldn't come. The afternoon light through the windows turned the room golden. Maybe he thought later had taken too much already. They stepped outside together, the air warm, the garden humming with soft insect music. The lemon tree cast a pale shade. At the far corner stood the little shed, paint peeling, lock old. Caleb turned the key Rachel had left in the sunroom door tag. It fit here too. The lock clicked open. Inside, dust motes floated in shafts of light from a small window. Against one wall stood a wooden chest with another envelope taped to its lid. In Rachel's hand again, for Evan, open with love. Caleb crouched beside the chest, Evan kneeling next to him. He lifted the lid. Inside lay a small harness rigged with cloth straps, bright blue and red like something from a playground. On top sat a folded note. He opened it slowly. Evan, if you're standing on your own when you find this, you've already done the hardest part. These are wings, not the flying kind, but the kind that help you swing high enough to believe you could. Dad will know what to do. Love, Mom. Beneath the harness was a folded portable swing frame, light aluminum, easy to assemble. Rachel had marked each part with stickers, step 1, step 2. Caleb laughed, a shaky, tear-streaked laugh that felt like breathing after a long time underwater. She planned every detail, he said. Nora brushed her eyes. She must have ordered this before she got sick, Lily finished softly. She never stopped planning for tomorrow. Evan touched the straps with wonder. Can we make it? Caleb nodded, voice thick. We'll build it right here. He and Nora worked side by side, connecting the frame pieces under Lily's quiet guidance. The swing took shape quickly, a simple seat that could support Evan's weight safely, the straps bright under the sunlight. When it was ready, Caleb lifted Evan in, adjusting the harness gently. Hold tight, he said, and if you get tired, 2 taps, Evan finished, grinning. I remember. Caleb pulled the rope slowly, the swing rising and falling in an easy rhythm. The lemon leaves swayed with it. Evan's laughter filled the garden, bright, boundless, echoing against the walls that had known too much silence. Nora clapped once, unable to help herself. Lily wiped her eyes again, smiling. She'd be so proud, she whispered. When the swing slowed, Evan leaned back, looking up at the sky through the lemon branches. Dad, he said softly, Mom made the house a playground. Caleb's chest tightened. She made it home, he said. he looked at Nora and Lily, two women who had stepped into the story Rachel started, and knew that somehow this was not an ending but a doorway. As the sun dipped lower, painting everything in gold, Evan yawned mid-sentence. Nora caught the signal and smiled. "That's the day telling you to rest, Captain." Evan nodded, sleep heavy in his eyes. Caleb carried him inside, the boy's head against his shoulder, the rocket still in his small hand. In the hall, he passed the metronome on the console and wound it once, letting the gentle tick-tock start again, steady, sure, alive. Later, when Evan slept and the house was wrapped in that quiet hum of peace, Caleb stepped out to the garden alone. The swing moved faintly in the evening breeze. He sat on the edge of the porch steps, elbows on his knees, eyes on the stars just beginning to show. Nora came to stand beside him, arms folded lightly. "He's sleeping," she said, "smiling in his dreams." Caleb nodded. "He hasn't smiled like that in years." They stood in silence for a long moment, listening to the crickets, the steady tick of the metronome faint through the window. "Thank you," he said finally. Nora shook her head. "You don't need to thank me." "I do," he said, "for being here, for believing when I didn't." She gave a small smile. "That's what your wife did for everyone, we're just following her map." He looked up at the stars again. "I used to think coming home early would mean facing emptiness," he said, "but today I came home early and found everything." Nora's eyes softened. "Maybe you were just on time." The night breeze stirred the lemon leaves. Somewhere inside, the metronome clicked its last talk and went still. Just then a faint rustle came from Evan's room, a sound like paper falling. Caleb turned, went inside quietly, and found Evan sitting up, blinking in the dim lamplight. On his lap lay the drawing he'd made earlier, the three islands, the rocket, the metronome. But now under the little clock sketch another line had appeared. A breeze from the open window must have flipped the paper, revealing faint pencil words on the back, Rachel's handwriting again, from some reused sheet she'd drawn on long ago. "When you hear the tick-tock stop, start again. There's always another song waiting." Caleb sat beside his son, heart full. "She left messages everywhere," he said. Evan smiled sleepily. "Then we'll find them all." Caleb kissed his forehead. "We will," he said, "tomorrow." Outside, the swing swayed once, catching the moonlight like wings ready to lift. Even before the sun rose, the house felt different. The tick-tock was not playing, but you could almost hear it in the quiet, the beat of a day that wanted to be brave. Caleb woke before his alarm, not because of a meeting but because he wanted the morning. He sat on the edge of his bed and held the note he kept in his jacket pocket, the one from Rachel that he had never opened. His fingers shook, but not from fear. He slipped a thumb under the fold and finally read the whole thing. "If you are reading this, it means you came home early or you wished you did. It means you are listening again. There is no perfect time to start loving out loud. There is only now. Put both feet on the floor, breathe, walk toward our boy. When the beat stops, start it again." He pressed the paper to his chest and smiled through wet eyes. "I hear you," he whispered into the morning light. "I hear you now." He checked on Evan. The boy slept curled around his rocket like a guard, mouth open, a little hair pointing in all directions. Bolt and Flash leaned against the wall nearby, patient as always. On the dresser, yesterday's drawing, the three islands in the rocket, had a new line that Evan must have added before falling asleep. A path curved from the rocket to the lemon tree, and at the end of the path a small square box with stars drawn on top waited. Caleb felt a soft laugh lift in his chest. "We're making maps now," he said under his breath. "Good." He found Nora already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, the good pan on low. She had a way of moving that made the house calm. "Morning," she said, warm and simple, like the word had no sharp edges. "I was going to bring you coffee." He shook his head and reached for 2 mugs himself. "Let me," he said, glad to say it. They stood side by side, not talking much, listening to the quiet sounds of a house that was starting to trust the day. "We'll go slow," Nora said after a moment, as if answering a question he had not asked. "We always do," he nodded. "But we'll go," he added, and she smiled. By 8, Lily arrived with a small binder she had put together in the night. Clear pages with Rachel's notes, old photos from the clinic, simple charts with boxes that said things like rest equals progress 2 and brave plus safe equals strong. She placed it on the table like a gift. "I can stay as a friend," she said, careful with the word. "Or I can step back, whatever keeps the house steady." Caleb met her eyes and found no push there, only kindness. "Stay as a friend," he said. "And as someone who knew her voice." Lily's eyes brightened. "Then I'll be the voice that says drink water and laugh at least twice before noon." He almost laughed right there. Evan woke to the smell of toast and the rhythm of voices. He shuffled in with his hair wild and his socks not matching, a rocket captain who had slept off a long trip. "Good morning," he said, the words slow with sleep. He climbed into his chair and Caleb slid a plate of toast triangles in front of him like he was serving a king. "Today," Evan announced between bites, "I'm going to touch the lemon tree without holding the bars." He said it like a weather report, not a request. Nora glanced at Caleb. Caleb looked back at Evan. "We'll listen to your legs," he said. "We'll follow the beat, 2 taps and we stop." Evan nodded, serious. 2 taps, he repeated, tapping his thigh once just to feel the signal in his bones. Lily held up the binder. And afterward I want to show you a game your mom made up. It's called Quiet Feet Loud Smile. Evan grinned, crumbs on his lip. That's a good name. They began in the sunroom. The bar stood steady, the lemon tree glowing a gentle green. Caleb set the metronome on the sill and wound it. The first tick felt like the start of a song everyone knew but had not sung in a long time. Evan placed his hands on the rails and took 2 slow steps forward, then 1 backward, like a dancer learning to trust the floor. How do your knees feel? Nora asked. Like bees, Evan said, face tilted up with a smile. Busy but not stingy. We can work with busy, Lily said from the doorway, and Evan laughed at the strange sentence like it was a joke. They kept it short on purpose. Short is not the same as small when you are building hope. After the first set, Evan rested with the rocket on his lap while Lily opened the binder to a page that showed pictures of Rachel and Tiny. Evan clapping to a beat. Clap on tick, breathe on talk. Your mom called this the small drum, Lily said, tapping the table lightly. She said it was for days when legs were tired or hearts were. Evan put his palms on the table and played the small drum, a quiet, steady clap that made his shoulders relax and his eyes soften. Caleb played along, offbeat at first, then close to even, and when he realized he had matched Evan without thinking, something opened in his chest that felt like sky. After snack time, apple slices again by law, they walked to the garden. The air smelled like sunlight on leaves and the simple, clean scent of a day that was not in a hurry. The swing stood where they had left it. The lemon tree held a single pale yellow fruit that had blushed more since yesterday, as if it wanted to cheer too. Evan touched the trunk with his fingertips and whispered, "Hello, tree." Then he looked at the ground between the patio and the trunk. It's 3 small islands, he said. But the last one is tiny. Caleb could see it too, 2 wide patches of stones and 1 narrow strip of earth. We can make the last one bigger, he offered. Evan shook his head slowly. I think it's the right size, he said, like a captain choosing a path. They set the foam pads outside now, 1 on the patio, 1 on the first patch of stone, the last on the strip of earth right before the tree. The console table could not help here, no rails waited. It was only sky and ground and hands that stood ready without grabbing. Caleb wound the metronome again and set it on the porch step where the sound could travel, soft and clear. Tick, tock. The garden listened. Evan stood at the start and put his feet where he wanted them. Nora stepped back a little more than usual. Lily stood near the porch, close enough to help, far enough to let the moment belong to the boy. Caleb placed bolt and flash on the chair within reach and opened his hands, palms up as if offering air. Count me in, Evan said, and Caleb heard his own voice come out steady. 1, he said. 2. Evan moved on 3, foot to pad, eyes on the tree. He held breath, looked calm. Second step, slow and sure. He paused longer, jaw set with focus that was not harsh, just clear. The third pad waited on the strip of earth like a small promise. On the next tick, Evan lifted his foot. On the talk, he set it down. The pad flexed. His knees shook. He did not rush to stop the shake. He let it be a wave he could surf. 2 taps? Nora asked quietly, reminder without fear. Evan tapped once, rest, and the rest was enough. He looked up at the lemon tree's single fruit and smiled a tiny smile. Then he did the thing he had said out loud at breakfast. He took 1 more small step off the last pad and pressed his palm against the tree all by himself. Nobody shouted, nobody clapped loud. The garden did not need noise to know it had seen a miracle. Lily put a hand to her mouth and let out a sound that was half laugh, half happy cry. Nora blinked back tears and whispered yes like a gentle cheer to the air. Caleb walked forward but stopped short of scooping Evan up because the moment belonged to his son's legs as much as to his heart. How does it feel? He asked. Evan kept his palm on the rough bark, cheeks wet now but smiling. Like the tree is saying hello back, he said. They gave the moment time. Then Evan turned slow and took a tiny step back onto the pad, then another onto the stones, then the last to the patio where he sank into Caleb's arms with the tired joy of someone who has crossed a river by stepping stones and made it to the soft shore. I did it, he said into his father's shirt. You did, Caleb answered. He kissed the top of Evan's head without thinking and tasted the salty shine of hard-won joy. That could have been the end of the day's brave and it would have been enough. But the house was not finished talking. After lunch, Ron waved them to the front door with a small smile. There's someone you might want to see, he said. The mail carrier stood on the porch with a flat, well-taped package. The return address was a storage office near the clinic. This came with a note to deliver only after the garden moment, he said, puzzled and pleased to be part of something that felt like a story. Caleb signed and took it inside. They gathered in the living room. Evan in the middle of the couch, Nora on the right, Lily on the left, Caleb kneeling on the rug with a pair of scissors and a careful heart. He sliced the tape and lifted the lid. Inside lay a small, old-fashioned music box with a hand crank. The wood was etched with tiny stars, the same shape Rachel had doodled on everything. A folded card lay on top. Turn the handle only when you are ready to hear me laugh, Rachel had written. Caleb closed his eyes. Okay, he said to the quiet, okay. He set the box on the table and turned the little silver handle. The The song that spilled out was one Rachel had hummed on long drives and while folding warm clothes on windy afternoons. It was simple and bright and full of remembering. Evan's face lit like a window when a lamp is switched on at dusk. "Mom's song," he whispered. The music rose and fell, and without being told, they all started to breathe with it, the way people do when they are hearing something they love. On the last soft notes, a thin drawer slid out from the side of the box with a click, like a secret. Inside lay 3 paper stars with strings and a small card for each. The first star said, "For quiet days, hang me where the light is kind. Count to 8 the slow way, you are already brave." Evan hung it on a plant near the window and counted, smiling. The second star said, "For days with big clouds, open a window, even a small one. The air knows how to help." Lily laughed softly and opened the smallest top window, letting in a sweet ribbon of air. The third star said, "For a day when you are ready to share joy with the world, go to the front step at sundown. The sky will do the rest." They all looked at each other. Caleb checked the time. Sundown was a few hours away. "We'll be there," he said, not to anyone in particular, and everyone nodded as if the sky had RSVP'd. They filled the afternoon with a kind of work that felt like play. Evan helped Nora choose a spot for a small brave shelf by the hallway, a place to put little proofs of courage. The first foam pad, a smooth stone from the garden, the note with the 2 taps rule written in block letters that Evan printed himself. Lily walked Caleb through the binder and then carefully through another folder she had brought, this one with information about a family program at the clinic, support circles for parents, fun groups for kids who use crutches or walkers, volunteer lessons for anyone who wanted to help. "I don't want to take over your house," she said, "but I want you to know you're not alone." Caleb looked at the paper for the parent circle and felt his chest loosen. "I think I have words to say now," he admitted. "Even if they come out slow," Lily smiled a soft yes. In a quiet corner, while Evan and Nora built a tower of plastic cups by the rug stack, breathe, count, laugh, Caleb asked a question that had waited under his tongue since yesterday. "Nora, what do you want for you?" She blinked, surprised. "For me?" "Yes," he said. "You have given us so much. What do you want to learn or become next?" "I want to help you walk your own brave path too." She looked down at her hands, then up again with a small, bright light in her eyes. "I want to study," she said, voice almost a whisper. "Not to leave care, but to do it deeper. I have been reading every night. I want to become a licensed helper for kids like Evan." I didn't say it because it felt too big. "Big is not bad," he said. "Big is just a wide sky. If you want it, we will find a way." Her eyes filled, then steadied. "Okay," she said, "I want it." He nodded once, a promise made simple and sure. Sundown came soft, painting the hallway gold. They took the music box to the front step because the star had said to be there. Neighbors were out with dogs and slow evening steps. The sky stretched pink and orange like someone had brushed it with warm paint. Evan stood between Caleb and Nora, bolt and flash within reach but not in his hands. Lily set the metronome on the step for old times and wound it once, then let it sit quiet, no sound now, just the idea of rhythm inside them. Caleb felt the hum of the city, low and kind. "Do you think the sky really does the rest?" Evan asked. "It already is," Nora said, and she pointed up. A wide V of birds tilted over the street, their wings catching the last light, their line turning in a smooth curve as if a gentle hand had guided them. A breeze moved across the block, lifting every flag, brushing every cheek. From the house next door, someone began to play a piano lightly, a tune that found the exact middle between happy and gentle. An older man walking a small dog stopped at the sidewalk and smiled at Evan as if he knew the story without any words. "Good evening," he said, tipping an invisible hat. Evan lifted a hand and waved back like a prince greeting his village. Caleb felt the moment arrive, not loud, not sharp, just true. He knelt so he could look Evan straight in the eyes. "I want to say something," he said, and his voice did not shake because it was not carrying a weight alone anymore. "I was gone even when I was here. I let work be louder than love. I am sorry. I am here now. I will miss meetings if I have to. I will burn toast if I have to. I will count every beat. I will listen when you tap. We will walk this house together until every room knows our footsteps." Evan listened without looking away. He nodded once. "Okay," he said. "Then I will try the sidewalk." Caleb blinked. "Right now?" Evan smiled a small, brave smile. "Only to the first line," he said, pointing at a pale crack in the concrete 4 steps away. They did not set pads, they did not wind the metronome, they did not call it a test. It was just a boy and a sidewalk and a family holding a quiet circle of care. Evan lifted his foot and set it down. 1. He breathed. 2. He held his arms wider for balance and made his hands into small planes. 3. His knees shook and then steadied like a boat finding calm water. 4. He reached the line and touched it with the tip of his shoe. He looked up at Caleb with a grin that could have powered the streetlights. "High line," he said. The neighbors who had paused clapped gently, the kind of soft cheer a community gives when a child does something important. The dog wagged its whole body. The birds curved out of sight. Back inside, the house felt like it had grown an inch in every direction. Courage does that to walls, it makes them breathe. They ate dinner at the table, all 4 of them, because Lily stayed when Evan begged for one more story about the clinic fish tank that had a lazy snail and a fast snail. Caleb told the only joke he remembered and messed up the punchline, which made it funnier. After dishes, Evan asked for quiet feet, loud smile. Lily showed him how to place each foot silently on the floor while keeping his face as happy as possible. It was a silly game that somehow taught focus and joy at once. He loved it. When it was time for bed, they went through the new routine together. Brush teeth, stretch calves against the wall, choose a story, wind the music box one turn, place bolt and flash where they could sleep. Evan climbed into bed and tugged on Caleb's sleeve. "Will you sit until I sleep?" he asked. "Every night you want," Caleb said. Evan thought, then shook his head. "Just until the beat stops," he said, and he tapped a slow rhythm on the blanket. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Caleb matched it on the chair arm. The rhythm got slower as Evan's eyes closed. When it stopped, the room held a sweet, even quiet. Caleb stepped into the hall and found Nora and Lily by the Brave shelf, looking at the little proofs like guests at a gallery. He joined them and added something of his own, the unopened work email from the afternoon marked with a star, then slid under the shelf instead of on top. "What is that?" Nora asked. "A reminder," he said, "that some things can wait." He looked at both of them, at the way this house had become a circle of hands, and felt something like peace settle in his bones. He went to the sunroom after that, alone for a minute, and set the metronome on the windowsill. He wound it once, then stopped, then wound it again just because he could, just to feel that he was not being pulled by it but walking with it. The lemon tree stood still and kind. The swing outside moved on its ropes like a slow breath. He touched the bars and whispered, "Thank you," not sure whether he meant the metal, the day, or the woman who had planned all of this with stars on her notes. Probably all three. A soft knock sounded at the front door. It was the older neighbor with the small dog in a blue envelope. "This came to our box by mistake," he said. "Thought you might want it sooner rather than later." Caleb thanked him and opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside was a small photo Rachel had taken and printed years ago. A blurry shot of tiny Evan in socks, both arms up, both feet off the ground for a second, Rachel's thumb halfway in the frame like proof that she had been there too. On the back, in her slanted hand, "First flight, there will be more." Caleb pressed the photo to his heart and closed his eyes. "There will be," he said into the quiet, tasting the truth of it. Next morning and the ones after were not perfect. Some steps shook more, some games felt heavier, Evan's knees got tired, the beat sometimes slipped. But now the house knew what to do when that happened. When the tick-tock stopped, they started again. When fear tried to talk too loud, they opened a window. When the day felt big, they made it small. Count to 8, drink water, tell the lazy snail story. Caleb started blocking an hour on his calendar every day and called it home hour. He ignored calls. He learned to make pancakes that were not burnt on one side. He missed one big meeting and the world did not end. He made 2 little meetings with his son and the world got better. Nora filled out an application to a weekend certification class, and when she worried about tuition, Caleb said what Rachel would have said: "We will solve that together." Lily introduced them to a small Saturday group at the clinic. Evan sat in a circle with 3 other kids who carried their walkers like flags. They traded secrets like trading cards, best stickers for crutches, best knots for laces, funniest knee wiggles. Caleb sat with other parents and listened to a man say, "I thought I had to be strong like stone, turns out I had to be strong like grass." He wrote that down in the binder so he would remember. On a soft Sunday, they had a small gathering in the garden. Ron grilled corn. The neighbor with the small dog brought lemonade. Someone played a guitar. Evan showed his 3 islands to 2 kids from the clinic, and they turned the path into a game where the lemon tree awarded leaf points for steady landings. They hung the paper stars where the light was kind, and for the first time since the house had lost its music, it had a choir. Laughter, gentle songs, the sound of feet learning to trust the ground. As the sun lowered again, Evan asked for the front step. They went together, all of them, because some steps want witnesses. He pointed at the sidewalk line and then at the next one, a daring leap of 4 more steps. "I want to say hi to that line too," he said, and his smile said he knew it was big and he wanted it anyway. They did not say no. They did not say yes right away. They said, "Let's listen." He placed his foot on the first spot, then the next, and at the third his knee shook harder than it had all day. He tapped twice. They stopped as if a conductor had lowered a hand. He breathed, he laughed a little. "Not today," he said, and the words did not sound like failure. They sounded like a boy who knew he was allowed to pick his own brave. He turned, took 1 step back, then another, then the last, and when his shoe touched the safe edge, he lifted both hands and said, "I did the right thing." They all said yes at the same time, and it felt like a small, perfect song. Later in the deep blue after dinner, Caleb and Evan sat together at the piano even though neither of them could really play. They pressed keys soft and then soft again, making a slow, simple tune that would never make the radio but made the room feel like a held hand. Nora washed the last dish and listened with a smile. Lily sketched the scene in a notebook, lines loose and sweet like Rachel, as if she were sending a picture forward for tomorrow. When it was time for bed again, Caleb tucked Evan in and asked, "Do you want the beat tonight?" Evan thought, then shook his head. "I think I can make my own this time," he said. He patted the blanket in a slow rhythm and then let his hand fall still. "Dad, yes, when I am older, can I help other kids find their brave?" Caleb's eyes warmed. "You already are," he said, "but yes, we will make a map for them too." Evan smiled and closed his eyes. Caleb stepped into the hall and stood by the brave shelf one more time. He added the photo Rachel had taken right in the center where the little flying feet could watch the door and the lemon tree and the sunroom bars. He breathed in and out, slow and even. The house breathed with him. He did not think about tomorrow's meetings. He did not wonder whether he would be strong enough. He felt the truth that had moved into the walls. They were not doing this alone. They were doing it together, a step at a time, a song at a time, a laugh at a time. Outside, the swing caught a bit of moonlight and moved the smallest amount, like a yes. Inside, the metronome, unwound and quiet, still looked ready, not because it had to control them, but because it had taught them to find a beat even when nothing made a sound. There would be hard mornings. There would be tired knees. There would be days they forgot the game and had to draw the islands again. But there would also be more first flights, more hello lines, more garden afternoons where the tree seemed to lean in and listen. And there would be love, simple and bright, not the kind that tries to fix everything, but the kind that sits beside you while you try. There would be faith, the small kind that says let's try one more time, and the big kind that lets a father open an old note and hear a voice that never really left. There would be miracles that looked like 5 steps and a hand on a lemon tree. There would be a home that stayed full of steps and laughter just like she wanted. Wherever you are watching from, tell us your city in the comments so we can celebrate with you. And if this story warmed your heart, subscribe to this channel to support our growth.